Well, hello. I am Matt Williamson, and the Steelers win. Heck of a game. Maybe it shouldn't have been that close, but that's okay. As usual for these night games, it is late, and I am recording this even before Tomlin's press conference. So this, again, is extreme initial reaction. Tomorrow's podcast will be far more in-depth. But my very, very first take is I was really impressed with the offense and not impressed with the defense, really. And special teams were a huge key yet again. So let's start with our halftime stats, as we often do. Good for Beanie Bishop, by the way, to end this thing. It made my heart pitter-patter a little more than it should. Although I will say there was never a time I was really, really worried about this game being a loss in the end. But at the half, it's 9-9. There should have been so many more points. I'm sure the Giants were kicking themselves, and the Steelers had to be kicking themselves. There was over 400 yards of offense in the first half, and it's 9-9. Nobody can get in the end zone. And at that point, Jones is 11 for 16, 141. Fine. Wilson similar, 12 of 19, 148. Both were playing well. Harris, though, had 82 yards on the ground with 10 carries and two catches for 16. Tracy, at this point, only had 9 carries for 35. More on that later. Slayton, more on him later, had big plays, 3 for 90. But the Steelers had 237 yards in the first half. Giants had 183. Both numbers are big. One's good, one's bad, depending how you're looking at it. But the Steelers had run 37 plays compared to 28. They were averaging 6.4 yards per play, which is almost identical to Giants at 6.5. But the Steelers were starting to control time possession. I thought that would be more of a trend in the second half. They had 16-35 out of a possible 30 in the first half. And they had 104 rushing yards in the first half compared to just 42 for the Giants. 13 first downs versus 7. 3 out of 7 on first, but they held the Giants to 2 out of 7, but the Giants did convert a fourth down opportunity. Only 2 penalties for the Steelers for 30 yards in the first half. Giants had 5 for 30. That became a big trend, of course. No Steelers sacks. Giants had 2. Now, just to be frank, at this point, I thought the Steelers were getting totally out-schemed by Daboll. I didn't understand for the life of me why there was so much blitz. This is a terrible O-line, and they were blitzing heavily, and they're just getting screened to death and didn't look like they adjusted or expected it. You're going to blitz, they're going to screen you, and then I didn't think tackling was very good. And too much of that. I mean, in the first half, this has kind of been a trend. You have better players than them. And I've been calling for a little more blitz, a little more variance. Don't get me wrong. But you shouldn't have to do it over and over and over. And Jones was beating you. And a lot of it was just with simple screens. And I thought Daboll really did a good job of scheming his group up. He's a very good offensive mind. The obvious trend, though, for both teams were so many missed opportunities on offense, particularly in the red zone. 2 right feet in isn't the catch. I know it isn't now, but if you would have asked me yesterday, if I were to got my left foot in 3 times and then got pushed out of bounds, that doesn't count. That should probably be examined, but that's a little odd. Like you could just hop down the sideline with one foot and somebody blasts you out of bounds 10 yards later and it's not a catch. It seems like a glitch. And the refs were too much of a story in this one. They definitely could have been more lenient. Again, this is at halftime I'm talking about here. But a lot of the stuff was just pre-snap penalties. I mean, we can blame the league and the ref all we want for too many flags. But when teams are doing stuff pre-snap that's illegal, they have to call it. And the Giants offense repeatedly did. So at this point, I'm saying the Steelers have showed us that the first half, beginning of games, really might not be their friend. They seem like the better team, but I'm worried about the defense. But they've been dominating third quarters and second halves in general. I think that'll be the case. And that's what I'm thinking at the half. I'm like, this isn't going well. This is closer than it should be. Giants left some opportunities out there too, but I bet they pull away. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. From the NFL to college, Bet Online is every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head over to the online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of over 150 different slot games. Head to the website today and use promo code BLEAV, all capitals, BLEAV. Bet Online, the game starts here. So the final stats were a 26-18 win. Sweated a little at the end, but I wasn't super concerned. Wilson ends up 20 of 28 for 278. One touchdown. Probably should have more. But that might start to be routine around here. That we start talking about quarterbacks consistently throwing for, I don't know, between 225 and 300 yards. I think that's conceivable. But on the other hand, I didn't think Daniel Jones played a bad game, but he was 24-38 for 264, no touches and a pick. You don't love seeing that from Daniel Jones, but clearly they were concerned with his running, which they should be going in. I mean, he only had one rushing yard on 3 attempts, and that's where he does a lot of damage. Third straight 100-yard game for Najee, 19 for 114, caught 3 balls for 117, but he is running so well. Tracy, though, he got hurt at the end, unfortunately for him, but he's going to be good. He is good. 20 for 145 and a touchdown, 2 catches for 5. There were some big holes he was running through. I am not impressed at all with the defensive performance top to bottom tonight. Pickens ends up 4 for 74, had an absolute presence. Jefferson also caught 4 passes for 64. Very encouraging game from him. Slayton ends up with 4 for 108. Neighbors 7 for 72. He is really, really good, but at least they kept the big plays away, from him. They made Neighbors earn it, and he did. 2 sacks each for Watt, Highsmith, and Ojulari. Thought there'd be even more sacks in this game, but obviously both teams kind of game planned around that. Steelers end up with 426 yards of total offense. Over 400 again. But they let up almost 400 yards. 394. 167 rushing yards for Steelers. That's awesome. But you let the New York Giants run for 157 on you. 157. Yards per rush. 5.4. Great. But you allowed 6.3. Yards per play. 6.8 for the Steelers. That is huge. You allowed 5.9, but if you're chunking out 6.8 yards per play in the NFL, you're doing good stuff. Third down, the Steelers were 6 for 13. What I like is that 13. That's not a massive number. They got a lot of first downs on early downs. Giants, on the other hand, they did convert a 4th, but they are only 33%. They were 5 for 15. Neither team converted in the red zone. 0 for 4, 0 for 3 for the Giants. Penalties, 5 for 50. Giants, 11. And it just seemed like more than that. But only for 65 yards. There were a lot of 5-yard procedural calls, things like that. One of which cost them a touchdown, which they have to be kicking themselves about. And again, the refs probably could have been a little more lenient on that call, but it was illegal. Close. 1 turnover versus 2 for the Giants. Steelers, of course, had a special teams touchdown. And in the end, that might be the only difference. I mean, you just look at it like, the Steelers dominated the game. They controlled the game. I believe some of that. But if it's not for the punt return for a touchdown, it's a pretty even football game. Time of possession favored the Giants 30-42 to 29-18. So some offensive notes. So many explosive plays. 10-yard chunk runs. Long balls, so great to see considering what we've seen lately around here. chunk runs, Najee, big holes, fighting for himself, well schemed up. I thought this was a really good Arthur Smith game. And Russ is just so highly competent. He consistently gets them in the right play. He lets them get into different chapters of Smith's playbook, knows when and where to attack. The deep ball is really good. Not always pretty, but it gives his players a chance downfield, which also can lead to a lot of defensive pass interference and things like that. So they have a quarterback. I'm not sure he's Mahomes or, but he was very impressive again tonight and exactly what you wanted to see. Najee was phenomenal again. He really was. Great to get Austin, of course, at the punt return, but great to get Austin and Jefferson more involved in the game as well. And just shows that they're not terrible players. They're very also highly competent NFL wide receivers. They're never going to be stars probably, but a different quarterback just gets them more involved. Defensively, though, scheme, tackling, big plays allowed. They didn't do a lot well. Yes, they had some pass rushing moments, but I thought they'd even have more of those. This is a bad O-line that let up 9 sacks last week. But hey, Beanie ends the game. What again? Wow, good for him. Neighbors is a star. He's going to be a superstar. Tracy's going to be really good. That's fine. I wonder if Omar can convince Slayton not to get on the plane. To me, he's a perfect guy to go get for a late round pick from a team that is shot. Would be a nice number 2 / rotational guy for them. You could get him ready over the bye. Special teams. Boz almost goes without saying anymore. And Waitman's almost getting to that level where quality player, quality punter, monster special teams play, of course. Penalties detracted from the flow of the game, from the average viewer. But I guess we talked about them enough. But so here we sit. The game just ended. I'm going to go watch Tomlin's press conference now. You're 6-2 going into the bye. Now, you have not played a murderer's row of teams. Losing to the Colts and Cowboys, I would love to play both those teams again. I think I would pick the Steelers again against either one. I'm not implying they should be 8-0, but you're beating pretty bad teams across the board. But you got guys coming back. Herbig, Frazier, Sutton, Cordero Patterson. Those will all be nice additions. And you're rather comfortably in first place with all your AFC North games to go. Browns look a little better, but they're still a 2-win team. Bengals look really bad. Ravens have some holes, but they're still scary. So Steelers very, very much look like a playoff team in a really weak AFC. And as they sit here now with a midseason bye, I like their spot. And this was a game you had to have. You got it. It wasn't perfect. It rarely is in the NFL. Hope the defense goes back to the drawing board a little bit, but I like the drawing board that the offense is on. All right, much more detailed take tomorrow. Over and out.